And to show you that you cannot trust the administration, you cannot trust the press and what you're up against. You know it, but it's good for a refresher from time to time. We're going to give this to you in bite-sized pieces tonight so you can take them and have them go viral and share them with your friends. That'll be 5 o'clock on the Blaze TV. But we wanted you to have these because I don't think we have to convince we're not going to convince people anymore what is true and what isn't. But you have to have a compass that guides you through these times, or you'll just never make it. There's no hatred. There's no smearing. It is just the facts on what is the truth. Because now we're starting to get into some dangerous lies. We're getting into the lies of the IRS, that they're just incompetent. If the IRS can do this to the Tea Party and they take over your medical records next year, which they do, if they can get away with this, you and your family's health are in trouble unless you play ball with what the government wants you to do. You're getting into the lies now to where they say they back freedom of speech, but they will silence anyone's speech. They back freedom of speech, but the feds are now suggesting that anti-Muslim speech can and will be punished. We're into some really dangerous things because we're about to enter what I believe is World War III. Now, I'll be called crazy, a kook for saying that, whatever. It's not going to happen tomorrow. But what you're seeing now in Turkey and Syria is now the next, and I believe the last phase before it starts to go really bad. You started it, it was really started in Egypt and Tunisia. Wasn't it the Tunisian guy?
Yep.
It really started there. That was the Archduke Ferdinand moment. And I said it would spread across and destabilize the Middle East. We're now destabilizing Turkey and Syria. And the Muslim Brotherhood, which we back, has now called for a jihad in Syria. It's not good. So you have to understand what we're up against. And let's go to Benghazi, because Benghazi is a very critical story, because Benghazi is the beginning of World War III. We're in a proxy war now, I believe, with Iran and Russia. We're on the wrong side. I mean, Russia is too, but I agree more with Russia than I do with our own country. You don't arm radicals. And that's what we're doing. They started blaming and smearing, and it became ridiculous after Benghazi. They started to blame a ridiculous YouTube video for the uprising in Benghazi.
Our current best assessment, based on the information that we have at present, is that in fact what this began as was a spontaneous, not a premeditated, response to what had transpired in Cairo.
What we do know is that the natural protests that arose because of the outrage over the video were used as an excuse by extremists to see if they can also directly harm U.S. interests.
And that is what we saw play out in the last 2 weeks. As a crude and disgusting video sparked outrage throughout the Muslim world.
If you have insurance that you like, then you will be able to...
Is wrong cut?
Wrong cut. We haven't done this one.
To address the video circulating on the internet that has led to these protests.
And it is in response not to United States policy, not to, obviously, the administration, not to the American people. It is in response to a video, a film.
Okay, they knew all along that it had nothing to do with it. Then when called on it, they lashed out, as they always do, in rage.
The fact is, we had 4 dead Americans. Was it because of a protest, or was it because of guys out for a walk one night who decided they'd go kill some Americans? What difference at this point does it make?
Other questions arose. Why weren't steps taken to ensure the safety of those Americans? The answer? Lies.
Well, we weren't told they wanted more security again. We did not know they wanted more security again.
Really? Weren't told. The White House wasn't told that our embassy, which had been attacked multiple times before, they weren't told that they needed more security.
U.S. mission in Libya repeatedly asked for better security before last month's attack on the American consulate in Benghazi. A State Department officer says there were 13 confirmed security threats in the 6 months before the attack.
And for almost a year, there was an escalating pattern of violence directed towards the United States and other Western targets in Libya. Attacks on the consulate in Benghazi, attacks and assassination attempts on the British ambassador, attacks on the International Red Cross, attacks on courthouses, judges assassinated, culminating on September the 11th in the murder of 4 Americans, including our ambassador.
Okay, so what we still haven't quite proven yet, but I know we will, is that the entire Benghazi fiasco is about gun running to Syrian rebel forces. There's a disturbing piece of information that came to my attention today that we'll be getting into in the next few days. Disturbing. Something is very wrong here. But they don't want to talk about that because it goes against international law. It also goes against what the Russians have told us. Do not run guns to Syria. That's why I believe we're in a proxy war now with Russia. So why is it outrageous, though, for people to believe that we were running guns? How could it possibly be a conspiracy theory to believe this administration could gun run when they were already gun running to Mexican drug lords? And they tried to lie their way out of that one as well.
Well, first, let me make something very clear. And in response to an assertion that you made or hinted at, nobody in the Justice Department has lied.
Why was the letter withdrawn?
The letter was withdrawn because there's information in there that was inaccurate. The Justice Department letter of February...
Okay, well, tell me what's the difference between lying and misleading Congress in this context?
Well, if you want to have this legal conversation, it all has to do with your state of mind and whether or not you had the requisite intent.
Okay, well, nice try. But the president lied about it and lied about the scandal to the entire world, and he's on tape when he was speaking to Univision.
First of all, I think it's important for us to understand that the Fast and Furious program was a field-initiated program begun under the previous administration. When Eric Holder found out about it, he discontinued it.
Unbelievable. I mean, I don't even know where to begin. First of all, it's a field mission. So in other words, it didn't start even in Washington. It started with a couple of crazy agents. It's a field mission. But the program was started in October 2009. When did President Bush leave office? The program, again, started in October 2009. But as always, he tried to blame Bush. Maybe the president wasn't informed of such a thing called a calendar. But as he has done so many times before, you attack your predecessor.
When I walked into the Oval Office, I had more than $1 trillion deficit greeting me. And we know where it came from. 2 wars that were paid for on a credit card, 2 tax cuts that were not paid for, and a whole bunch of programs that were not paid for, and then a massive economic crisis. And despite that, what we've said is, yes, we had to take some initial emergency measures to make sure we didn't slip into a Great Depression. My administration inherited a deficit of over $1 trillion. But because we also inherited the most profound economic emergency since the Great Depression.
And then if that doesn't work, you don't just blame the president, you have to blame the GOP.
It's true the car went into the ditch. And it is true that me and Al and Amy and Mark and others, we've had to climb down into the ditch. And it is hot down there and dirty. And we'd been pushing that car, pushing it. The whole time the Republicans have been standing on the sidelines. I don't know how they've been bamboozling folks into thinking that they are the responsible, fiscally disciplined party.
Right.
They run up these wild debts. And then when we take over, we got to clean it up. And they point and say, look how irresponsible they are. Look at the facts. Look at the numbers.
Look at the numbers, and he's blamed a lot of those numbers under him. He had no choice. He was trying to be responsible, but it was the Arab Spring and earthquakes.
The economy's already had to absorb an earthquake in Japan, the economic headwinds coming from Europe, the Arab Spring, and the rise in oil prices. There is no doubt this has been a tumultuous year. We've weathered
the Arab Springs effect on oil and gas prices.
Don't forget headwinds.
Right. It's got headwinds. And it's us, really. It's the United States of America that was responsible for the violence in Mexico.
And in the United States, we recognize our responsibilities. We understand that much of the root cause of violence that's been happening here in Mexico, for which so many Mexicans have suffered, is the demand for illegal drugs in the United States.
And then he tried to close Gitmo, but he couldn't because Congress wouldn't let him.
For Congress to prevent us from closing a facility that should have never been opened.
Right. And then, of course, there was a job problem, and the jobs are so horrible, but that's only because of the internet.
When I go into factories these days, what's amazing is how clean and how quiet they are. Because what used to take 1,000 folks to do now only takes 100 folks to do. And one of the challenges in terms of rebuilding our economy is businesses have gotten so efficient that, when was the last time somebody went to a bank teller instead of using the ATM or, used a travel agent instead of just going online? A lot of jobs that used to be out there requiring people now have become automated, and that means us investing in our kids' education.
It's amazing. It's almost like what he's saying there is last time I went to a factory, there were kids working there, and then the coal dust from the shuttle of coal that had to be pumped into the furnace below to make those big industrial machines work. But apparently now it's clean and quiet, and he didn't see that one coming. ATMs didn't escape his lack of personal responsibility and accountability.
You see it when you go to a bank and you use an ATM. You don't go to a bank teller. Or you go to the airport and you're using a kiosk instead of checking in at the gate. So
kiosks.
All these things have created changes in the...
Those are the reasons why we can't have jobs. I just, and who's blaming? Who does he blame for shutting down the White House tours after sequester kicked in? Definitely not him.
A week. Was canceling them really necessary?
I have to say this was not a decision that went up to the White House, but what the Secret Service explained to us was
Secret Service.
They're going to have to furlough some folks.
Right. The Secret Service let the president know what he's going to have to do. Has there ever been a president so shameless, so unaccountable, and yet has the unmitigated gall to say this?
It's always my responsibility. I'm less interested in allocating blame than just making sure that we're taking every step we need to move the economy forward.
Okay, I said the first year that this president was in office, I said, look out, because this president is going to go down in history as the most corrupt administration in the history of our country. More corrupt than the Grant administration, more corrupt than the Nixon administration. I think you could take both of those administrations and you could combine them. And the two of them and their scandals and their cronyism and everything else, you could combine those two administrations and you will still make those two administrations look like Girl Scout cookie scandals, that they weren't delivering all the thin mints that they said they were.
That is big, though.
That's a big scandal.
That's a big scandal.
It will make those administrations look like a Girl Scout troop. And I believe we can make that case. We've touched on Benghazi and the IRS and healthcare and Fast and Furious, but we haven't even begun on Eric Holder. We do that in just a second.